Today I'm going to answer one of your art questions. How do you decide how much detail to put in what area of your piece, and how much detail do you add in general? So I'm going to have a quick chat with you guys about my opinion on this topic. I'm Kirsty Rebecca and I make drawing and painting tutorials that are easy to follow even if you're just starting out. This time lapse that I have in the background is of a watercolour painting I did using archival pen for the details. So the first part of that question was, how do you decide how much detail to put in what area of your piece? And this really depends on the style that you're going for, and everyone will have their own opinion. So I'm just going to talk about it in the perspective of the way that I make my artwork. A good way to keep an area of your painting in focus is to put more details in that area. The viewer's eye will automatically be drawn to that area that has more detail than others. This doesn't mean that you don't have to do a good job in other areas of your painting though. You want to make sure that your entire painting is completely finished and well rendered to the way that you want it to look. For example, if you want a blurry background, don't just rush over it. Make sure that it's perfectly blended. Make sure that it's as well rendered as everything else on your piece. Make it look like it's intentionally done that way and not that you rushed over the background because you didn't think it was as important as the main subject. I've seen a lot of artwork where the face looks fantastic, but the hair looks rushed because they spent the most amount of time working on the face because that's the focal point, and they didn't spend as much time on the hair. If you're painting a tiger that is looking at the camera and you can see his body behind him and you want the face to be in focus, add more fur details in the face. Make sure that the eyes have the tiny highlights in them and make sure that you add every whisker. But when you get to the body, you just want to give that general gist of fur. Objects that are further away or parts that you don't want to stand out can be rendered more softly. So you don't have to put all of the same fur detail on the body as you did on the face, because the viewer's eye will automatically fill in the blanks if you just give that gesture of fur. And having the details on the main part of your painting will help the viewer's eyes be drawn to that area. I create a lot of wildlife pieces, so my main focus is usually the eye of the animal. So I'll spend a lot of time putting in all the details of the eyes, and then as I get further out from the eye, it will be softer and less detailed. It doesn't mean that I'll rush it more though, it means that it will be a softer blend than towards the main focal area. If you have a really detailed background, it can distract from the main focal point. It doesn't mean that you can't have a detailed background, you just want it to be softer and less harsh than the main focus point on the foreground. When you look at things in real life, your eyes can only focus on one thing at a time. For example, if you look at a landscape outside and you focus on a flower that's right in front of you, everything in the background will be out of focus. Or if you focus on a tree that's a bit further away, everything in front and behind that tree will be out of focus. If you keep that theory in mind when you create your own artwork, then you can use that to your advantage and make your main focal point have a bit more detail than the other areas. This way it draws the viewer's eyes into your painting and they'll look at your focal point first, and then their eyes will wander over the rest of the painting. If everything has the same amount of focus and detail, then the viewer can subconsciously be confused because their eyes don't automatically have a spot to focus on, and they may just skim over your painting and continue on to the next painting. After I've said all that, you don't actually have to use detail to create the main focal point. There aren't any rules in art that you have to follow. If you want to have the same amount of detail over the entire piece, you can do that, but you might want to make the focal point prominent by using another technique, like having the highest values or contrast in that area, or having the lightest parts and the darkest parts of your piece on your focal point. You may also want to use color to your advantage and have a bright color or a contrasting color as your focal point. And some people have their composition set out in a way that draws the viewer's attention to a certain spot on that painting. Anything that draws the viewer's eyes to that area will work. As for the question, how much detail to add in general, this depends on the artist and what kind of look you're going for. There's not one answer to this question. Sometimes I paint pieces where only part of it is in focus and the rest is extremely out of focus. Other times the entire piece is in focus with the amount of details that I have. So it depends on what your goal is for the piece. Where do you want the viewer to look? If you have one main idea or subject that you want the viewer to notice, then make sure that it has more detail than the rest of your piece. If you want the whole piece to be detailed, then you need to come up with different ways of bringing the viewer's attention to the main part of your painting, like the rule of thirds or colors or values. These things can all create depth and focus in your piece. One of the reasons why people ask this question is because they're just starting out and they're struggling to get things to look realistic, so they think by adding more and more detail it's going to look more realistic, but in reality that's not the case. If you want something to look more realistic, it's the values that are most important. So making sure that your darks are dark enough and your lights are light enough is more important than the amount of detail that you have on the piece. Also, making sure that you have an accurate outline to start with is really important as well. The details come last. That's the least important thing when it comes to making something look realistic. Everyone has a different answer to the question, what is art? Which means that everyone will have a different answer to how much detail is enough. Your work can look realistic and detailed from a normal viewing distance or even photorealistic. And for both of those styles, if you look closely at the painting, you'll probably be able to see those brush strokes or pencil strokes, whether it was intentional by the artist or not. If you're aiming for hyperrealism, where it's really difficult to tell the difference between a painting and a photo, even when you're right up close, then you'll want to make sure that you add every single little detail that you possibly can. I personally have been leaning towards creating artwork that looks detailed and realistic from a distance, but when you get closer, you can tell that it's a drawing or painting. When I visit art galleries and I see the old masters' work, I love that when you stand back, it looks like a photo, but when you get close, all you can see are a mismatch of brushstrokes and colours. And these are great examples of not using details to create the realistic effect. They're using values and colours and composition to create that effect rather than the little tiny minute details. I believe you have to have a lot of skill as an artist to leave brush strokes or pencil strokes not blended out at all and still have it look realistic from a normal viewing distance. When I'm creating my own work, I try to step back from it every now and then and ask myself if I can see the details that I'm putting in. If I can't see those details that I've just added, then it probably doesn't need to be there. So it really depends on what style you're going for. There's no wrong or right answers to this question, but I thought I'd give you my opinion anyway. If you want more tips and tutorials, there's a playlist on the screen that I thought you would enjoy, so click on that and I'll see you over there.